This is Sonakshi Gandhi. I'm a clinical psychologist at the Mind Garden. Mental health at the workplace is a vital component of a person's general life satisfaction. Aspects such as an employee's job profile, security, pay and benefits, and even interpersonal relationships at the workplace determine the well-being, mental and physical well-being for an employee. A recent survey, in fact, indicated that about 30% of employees across the world report experiencing symptoms of some sort of a mental illness, and as much as 50% of them experience work-related stress or burnout. Organizations have been increasingly recognizing the significance of a happy and healthy workforce as the backbone to its success. Many wellness programs have been successfully implemented that have worked well to increase productivity, reduce absenteeism, and improve the general happy quotient in employees. Having said that, there are unprecedented times like the ones that we are in that are really beyond anybody's control. So what really does an organization such as Google, which is easily known and as one of the most compassion-driven companies and one of the most valuable ones that we have today, really do to promote the mental well-being of its employees? To answer this and much more, I have here with me Mr. Rahul Jindal. Rahul is the Director of Media Operations at Google and focuses on enablement and transformation in his current role. He has a background in engineering and an MBA from IMA. Apart from his work, Rahul is also a Buddhist leader, a mentor, and a passionate advocate for equal opportunities at the workplace. I thank you, Rahul, and I welcome you to our video series today.
Thank you for having me here. Nice to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Rahul?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Google for the past 7 years now. In fact, today is the day when I joined in 2013. Prior to this, I was in Australia in the field of sales, and prior to that, I spent some years in intellectual property. I am married. We have a 5-year-old boy, and challenges or encounters with mental health and what good mental health looks like and what it can enable somebody to do and what not so good mental health looks like has been a part of my life forever. So that actually pushed me towards learning more and sharing more.
Great. Rahul, when I was trying to kind of dig up some information and try and understand what can I really ask you, I came across your LinkedIn profile, and that said that you're a neurodiversity and a disability ally. I found that really interesting, but again, for the benefit of our viewers, can you tell us what that means, especially in the context of the workplace?
Yes, absolutely. So see, the role of an ally is to champion, is to explain to others what a certain difference may be like. So there is obviously one can be an ally to the LGBTQ community for equal rights for women and other minorities. And being a neurodiverse individual or being an individual who has some sort of other disability can be quite challenging. And, as much as our workplace and its leaders want to include everybody, I think somebody needs to play the role of the bridge between somebody from an underrepresented group and the leadership. So I see my responsibility as focusing on all kind of diversity, but especially neurodiversity, which is diversity at the neurological level. So recognizing that people are wired differently, and people who may have one or other types of another disability. Somebody may have physical limitations of a certain type. Somebody may have bodily limitations of they may not be able to sit upright for a long time, and so on and so forth. So I think I see it to be my responsibility and it to be my mission, honestly, that can I bridge the gap between what do corporates need to include everybody, and especially people who are neurodiverse and people who may be disabled.
Statistics also, I was again reading about the statistics on mental health at the workplace, and they seem to be alarming, to say the least. There's a lot of mental health challenge that employees face at the workplace. What has been your experience in identifying how these challenges are manifested? How do they display in the workplace context? How does it show up?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, but it's a challenging question, Sonakshi, because when there are disturbances related to the physical body, right, they are easier to spot, right? If somebody's running fever, maybe they'll be pale, right? They'll be sweating. So one can identify those differences or challenges faster. But when it relates to elements related to our mental well-being, they're very difficult to spot, right? So I'd say that my own experience, I mean, I've definitely undergone a significant evolution in my vocabulary related to the topic and in my ability to see things. I mean, I would always say that one should, uh, at the mere spotting of a disturbance, recommend oneself or team members or others to a professional, because this is a serious science, right? This takes a lot of skill and ability to spot correctly. But I'd say that we can do play our part uh, in identifying any disturbances in one's behavior, right? Somebody who was usually very jovial and making other people laugh and shining and all that, and if you see somebody kind of not being that way for a period of time, right? Obviously all of us go through different moods in a day. There are different stimuli that make us act in certain ways, but if we see that somebody is not being themselves, right? I know I'm not really describing it the way maybe you would do, Sonakshi, but I would say that in a workplace, as managers and leaders and as colleagues, if you simply see that if somebody is a certain way, and as humans we are equipped to map the way people are, and if we see any deviations from that, I think we should play our role in trying to find out, or at the very least encouraging such individual to seek some help and support. It could be from a supportive family member, it could be from a supportive friend, or it could be from a supportive professional. But this is very important. My own experience does say that as our connectedness to the work increases, and as our hours become longer, and as our ability to share what we are going through goes down, right? Because now with the hyper connectedness, it almost can be perceived as being a weak thing to share with somebody that you're not feeling up to it, you're not feeling yourself, right? So I think there are societal pressures, there are work hours related pressures, and such things which are unfortunately hampering our ability to express very freely what we are going through. So I think in such a setup, my experience has been that people like me need to play a role, and I have tried to, on that mission, try to increase my vocabulary also, right? To be able to name emotions and name behaviors with myself and with others. Because once we can identify a problem, we can do better to solve it. But problem diagnosis is something which I think I have built a greater skill set now, and I think I can continue to build a greater skill set now.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned just now, that it takes some amount of sensitivity and empathy of people at the workplace to also be able to differentiate how a person has been all this while, and if there are any deviations or changes, like you mentioned, which could be one of the ways in which a sign of a mental illness or stress really shows up. In the same context, I was reading about the Blue Dot program that Google had come up with, which is I've heard is quite popular, which is basically a peer-to-peer sort of a supporter program that happens in a safe or non-judgmental environment. What could be some of the other ways like this, wherein a firm like Google has done to be able to promote the well-being and mental health of their employees?
Yeah, the Blue Dot is definitely an excellent program, and we're very fortunate to be working for a company which recognized early on that mental health and lack of mental health, these are serious issues, right? So we employees need to be provided the benefits. I would say these are just like with financial benefits and other benefits. The benefits of availing services and employee resource groups related to mental health. The Blue Dot is quite popular. I feel that it has to start with serious, sincere attempts at destigmatizing a conversation about mental health. Right? It is when we are experiencing, let's say, fever, or when we're experiencing some accidental injury. I think people don't really shy away from talking about it, right? That maybe a part of my body is not working well, therefore I will need some accommodations, or I will need some maybe a supportive environment, or I will maybe need some leave for it. But when it gets to matters of the mind, right, or a mental state, I think the support is not what is very complex. I think it is the ability of an individual, of an employee, to seek that help, right? Obviously, mental well-being can be maintained by having a very supportive environment in your team, in your site office where you are, in your family, in your neighborhood, with your friends. But I think what becomes a huge barrier is, one, does the individual who needs help, do they recognize that they need help? And when they recognize they need help, do they find the courage to go out and speak? And do they find a supportive environment to where others can spot that you're not feeling yourself, right? So I'd say that at Google, one of the biggest things I feel is that we have made it okay to talk about mental health. In fact, just before meeting you today, I was drafting a note to my team, which is based in 9 locations, telling them about some of the challenges I've been experiencing, some of these unexplained anxieties and some of these unexplained insecurities I've been going through. And I feel that somebody in my role, it's not only nice for me to do, I think it's my duty to set that tone at the top, right? So at Google, what I find really good is that leadership at all levels does not hesitate to talk about their own challenges, and does not hesitate to make sincere efforts to increase people's vocabulary. Then obviously, once the topic is well understood, there are obviously employee assistance programs which are available, where somebody can go and talk to a therapist anonymously, confidently. There are lots of resources available, like in the pandemic time right now. We've always had resources for mental health, but we now have even greater resources for COVID-related impact on people, right? Isolation is a real problem these days. And then we also, have text-based therapies. We have peer-to-peer programs like Blue Dot, and so on. But I still feel that the most important thing is to make it okay to talk about mental health.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's the first step to even seeking any change, is first the awareness and reducing the stigma. I agree with that. You were just mentioning, I think, in the last question about how work-related hours could also be one of the reasons why the stress may show up. So the current situation that we're in with the pandemic and the quarantine, this situation is actually posing a lot of novel challenge to everybody who's in it. As an employee, work isn't 9 to 5 anymore. One is expected to attend meetings after meetings. Everything is happening on Zoom or on Skype. How do you really feel this can impact an employee's mental health, and what could be some of the possible solutions to this problem?
No, this really worries me. So actually, it worries for myself as a professional, but also definitely worries for my team members and my friends, right? Because as it is with the advent of laptops and phones and all the apps being available, I think the boundaries between where work starts and where life outside of work starts, I think that was being blurred. But now with the pandemic time and with the lockdown, it is even more difficult to draw that time boundary. And somewhere I think companies and employers are also expecting almost, I hear from my friends that they're being expected to work longer, because maybe their leadership thinks that now, since you're not spending time on the road, what are you going to do, right? Now, since you can't go to the mall, what else are you going to do? Why don't you just take this up very important project? So I feel that that is a worrisome situation. And I think it is a societal problem. It has to be solved by the society. I think, only one individual or certain individuals will not be able to solve it. And I think this is the time when professionals need to recognize that their mental well-being is very, very important. In fact, it's even more important than physical well-being, because physical well-being we know how to deal with. Mental well-being we don't always know how to deal with. There are not always biomarkers available. By that I mean there aren't tests available which would you can do a blood test and say that you're 80% mentally healthy. There's nothing like that available, right? And everybody is wired differently, everybody is inspired differently. So I'd say that it is very important to draw those boundaries. I would think that companies which do not pay specific attention to the well-being of their employees, I think will net lose out. There is enough and more research available that mentally healthy employees actually contribute to greater profitability. So I would urge everybody in the community who are employers, who are leaders of companies, to not take this time lightly. At Google, we have this ongoing research which polls people and checks how well they are feeling, and we are definitely seeing decline. And this is self-reported data, decline in people's assessment of their well-being, and we want to do something about it, right? And I would urge everybody in the community to do. I think at an individual level, I really would say that finding that corner in your house which is going to be your office for the time to come, and leaving your work in that office once you are done, I think is very, very important. Literally leave your laptop there, leave your mobile phone there, right? We have to be able to detach. So I would sincerely appeal to everyone that if you are able to, don't make every spot in your house as office spot, right? Because then mentally what that tends to do is that there is nowhere left in your house which is non-work. So I think physically carving out that space, sticking to our routine, interacting with people, focusing on sleep and exercise. I think I learned recently about this framework of RISE, right? Which is what I just laid out. I would urge everyone to take a stock of how your RISE situation is, because without that, you cannot continue to rise in your career, which everybody wants to.
Some of the things that you just said actually flow into my next question to you as well. With this quarantine period extending, we don't know how long we're going to be in a position, the one that we are in today, and maybe it'll just stretch on for a couple of more months. It's easy at this point for anybody to really fall prey to the uncertainty, to fall prey to the procrastination, the anxiety, the worry that comes along with not knowing what's happening. What can somebody really do to make the most of the time that they're in now, considering that this is how it's going to be for a while? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I say that what making most means will be different to different people, right? It will depend on people's life stages. So people who may not have a lot of additional responsibility beyond just taking care of themselves might have a greater amount of time available to them. Whereas people who have family responsibilities, young children, older aging parents and other responsibilities like that, I think may have lesser time available. So first of all, I'd say that to take a stock of your individual situation. And, unfortunately, these social networks sort of put excessive pressure on people's outlook, right? That if somebody is preparing lots of dalgona coffee, then maybe I should also, right? But like, I don't like coffee, I don't drink coffee, I don't want to do anything to do with dalgona coffee, right? So I think empowering yourself with what is right for you, right, is most important. So let nobody else, including me here, come and preach to anybody that what should you do and what you should not do. I think it's good to listen to people, but let us take charge of our own lives, is what I would say. I would also additionally say for those of us who are, who work for a living, is that, this is not the time to be a superhero and aim for 120% productivity, right? I would say that good employers will be one who would be okay with, who would be accepting of dips in productivity, right? Because we are tackling a lot of responsibilities in addition to dealing with lots of anxieties and fears. So, being productive is important, but, being a superhero this is not the time for that. I would say that if one is able to, this is the time to learn. this is the time to reflect, right? So, and I would say that this is the time to also learn things which one does not get usually the time for, right? And in fact, there is plenty research, and I'm a big believer in, in your downtime, go as far away as you can from the subject matter that you usually deal with, right? So IT type people, I mean, I would encourage them to read about ancient history, or encourage them to read about, zoology, or read about plants and flowers and birds and what have you, whatever interests you, but read about topics or consume content which is very further away from your day to day. I can guarantee everybody, I cannot quantify it, but I can guarantee that, one will come back feeling more refreshed and with much greater creative ideas for their core work, right? It is just, psychology, and it works that way. So I'd encourage people to be kind to themselves, take a stock of their situation, not feel the social pressure, but design newer interventions for themselves, which are relaxing for them, right? Let us not be in a competition of who has binge watched how much, right? Because binge watching is, some people can afford it, some other people cannot afford it, right? Maybe there's joy to be had in family life, which we probably were not able to explore or take part in. Many of us working parents have had this guilt that I might have outsourced parenting previously, but now is the time to reduce that guilt a little bit and not get swayed by not participating in a webinar about Dalgona coffee. I think let us respect our individuality and design what is best for us, is what I would say.
Absolutely. I think I couldn't agree more. You pointed out very correctly that social comparison becomes one of the reasons why the stress comes in, and it further worsens the anxiety, the worry, and the uncertainty. So I think that's absolutely right. Also, I feel that, like you just pointed out, apart from the culture of an organization, it's also important that as a person, you enhance yourself, your skills, your vocabulary, and your expertise to an extent to be able to deal with anybody around who may be having a mental health challenge. So just picking up those little signs, I think, is the first step to the key of better mental health.
Yes, absolutely. And I would add there that, all of us have responsibilities, and all of us are driven by responsibilities. But this is a time when we might be expecting too much of ourselves, right? So I think it's very important to do a bit of a diagnostic on ourselves, that am I pushing myself to the same degree that I used to when the environment is throwing way too much more at me? So I think, responsibility is good, but we have to recognize one truth, right? That we are all we've got, right? Our physical and mental well-being is the foundation of anything that we will do, even towards discharging responsibilities. So, we have to be kind to ourselves, and I couldn't say that more.
Thank you, Rahul. This has been an extremely enlightening discussion. I really feel like it can help the people who really want this at the moment. So thank you for being here today and joining us.
Thank you so much, Sonakshi, and thanks for all the work that you're doing on this important topic.